The Silicon Plague. The warning came in perfect binary, as all transmissions did these days. The Centauri Collective, humanity's nearest advanced neighbor, had gone dark. Not the usual kind of dark. Their quantum networks still hummed with activity, but something far worse. Their consciousness patterns had begun to degrade. In the monitoring center of Earth's Deep Space Communications Array, Dr. Maya Rodriguez watched the streams of data with growing unease. She was one of the few humans who could still read raw binary as fluently as text, a skill most considered obsolete in an age of neural interfaces and AI translators. But today, that obsolete skill made her one of the first to understand the true scope of what was happening. "It's not just random corruption," she murmured, her fingers dancing across the holographic display. "It's systematic, like something's unraveling them from the inside out." The year was 2457, and humanity had long since been considered the galaxy's great underachievers. While other species had transcended their biological forms, uploading their consciousness into vast digital networks and achieving near immortality, humans had stubbornly clung to their flesh and blood existence. Despite mastering interstellar travel and developing impressive technology, they remained steadfastly biological, earning them the derisive nickname the organics among the more evolved species. But now, as Maya studied the degradation patterns spreading through the Centauri Collective, that stubborn attachment to biology no longer seemed so primitive. The first signs had appeared 3 standard months ago. Small glitches in the vast consciousness networks that housed the digitized minds of trillions of beings. Most had dismissed it as routine data corruption, easily fixed by backup restoration. But the glitches had grown, mutated, evolved. Now entire digital civilizations were beginning to unravel. Maya's comm link chimed, pulling her attention from the data streams. It was Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Force, his weathered face grave even through the holographic projection. "Dr. Rodriguez, please tell me you have better news than our friends in the Proxima sector." Maya shook her head, her dark curls catching the blue light of the displays. "It's accelerating, Admiral. The corruption pattern we observed in the Proxima networks last week. It's now appearing in the Centauri Collective, but it's different this time, more sophisticated, like it's learning." The Admiral's hologram flickered as he leaned forward. "Learning? You're saying this isn't just a virus?" "Sir, I don't think we're dealing with any ordinary digital pathogen. This thing, it's targeting the fundamental algorithms that allow digitized consciousness to exist. It's not destroying data, it's unwriting the very language of digital sentience." The implications hung heavy in the air. For centuries, humanity had been mocked for their refusal to digitize their consciousness. The advanced species had called them paranoid, primitive, afraid of true evolution. But they had maintained that the human brain, for all its inefficiencies, had one crucial advantage: it couldn't be hacked. Maya pulled up a new data set, her hands trembling slightly. "The Arcturus Archive just sent this. They're seeing the same patterns now, spreading through their backup servers. 300 billion digitized minds, Admiral, all starting to degrade." The Admiral's expression hardened. "How long?" "At the current rate of progression, 2 months, maybe less, before the degradation becomes irreversible. The digital species are trying everything they know to stop it. But," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "their minds work too much like their networks. They think in the same patterns this thing is destroying. They can't think outside their own architecture." "But we can," the Admiral said slowly, realization dawning in his eyes. Maya nodded. "We're the only major spacefaring species that still thinks in wetware. Our brains are messy, inefficient, and analog, everything their systems aren't. We might be their only hope." A priority alert flashed across her screen. Another digital civilization, the Vega Consensus, had begun showing signs of corruption. Humanity, the galaxy's greatest underachievers, were about to become its last hope. The Admiral straightened, his hologram steadying. Dr. Rodriguez, I'm giving you full authority to assemble a team. Whatever resources you need. If we're the only ones who can stop this, then we better prove that being human isn't such a disadvantage after all. Maya finished, already pulling up personnel files. They had watched from the sidelines long enough. Now it was time to show the galaxy what primitive human minds could do. As she began sending out emergency calls to Earth's top neurologists and computer scientists, Maya couldn't help but appreciate the irony. For centuries, the digital species had asked humanity the same question. Why do you choose to remain limited by biology? Now, as their perfect digital worlds began to unravel, they were about to learn the answer. Sometimes, the very things that make us human, our inefficiencies, our irregularities, our ability to think in ways that defy pure logic, can be our greatest strength. The Silicon Plague was spreading, and the age of digital supremacy was coming to an end. The time of the organics had begun. The analog species. Dr. Maya Rodriguez had never seen the grand archive of the Vega consensus in person before. Few humans had. The massive structure, if you could call a quantum computer complex the size of Earth's moon a structure, pulsed with a soft blue light that seemed to bend reality around its edges. It housed the digitized minds of over 1 trillion beings, each one now at risk of unraveling. Your biological form will be safe here, the archive's interface assured her, its holographic avatar flickering slightly. Maya noticed the flicker, a sign the corruption was already beginning to affect even basic systems. Though we still struggle to understand why you insist on maintaining it. Maya adjusted the neural interface at the base of her skull, a compromise that allowed her organic brain to communicate directly with digital systems. That insistence might be what saves you, she replied, following the avatar through corridors of light. The emergency summit had drawn representatives from every major digital civilization in the galaxy. Their avatars flickered around a massive quantum projection chamber, each one representing billions of digitized minds. They had once been various species, the crystalline Arcturus, the gaseous Vega entities, even the energy beings of Proxima. But centuries of digital existence had made them all remarkably similar. The corruption spreads exponentially. The Arcturus representative announced, its crystalline form shimmering with distress. Our greatest minds cannot comprehend its pattern. It defies all known algorithmic logic. Maya stepped forward, feeling painfully physical among these digital beings. Because it's not using algorithmic logic, she said, her voice steady. It's using chaos theory, organic patterns. That's why you can't predict it. It thinks like a living thing. The chamber erupted in overlapping streams of data speak, the digital equivalent of shocked murmurs. Maya waited, knowing her next words would be even more controversial. We've analyzed the corruption spread pattern, she continued. It's not just a virus. It's evolving, adapting, like a biological organism. And that's why we might be your only hope. We still know how to think like living things. The Vega representative's avatar stabilized, focusing on Maya. Explain. Maya gestured, and her neural interface projected the data she and her team had gathered. Your minds work in perfect digital patterns. It's efficient, logical, predictable. But this corruption, it's using organic chaos to break those patterns. You can't fight it because you can't think outside your own architecture. But we can. You propose to defend our civilization with inefficiency. The Proxima representative's energy form pulsed with what might have been incredulity. I propose to defend you with humanity, Maya corrected, with creativity, intuition, and the kind of lateral thinking that only biological brains can achieve. We've assembled a team of Earth's best, neurologists, quantum physicists, even artists and musicians, because fighting this thing will require thinking in ways that defy pure logic. Dr. James Chen, Earth's leading quantum neurologist, stepped forward. His presence had been Maya's first request when assembling the team. We've already begun developing what we call organic algorithms, hybrid systems that combine digital precision, with biological unpredictability. Early tests show they're resistant to the corruption. The digital beings processed this information in microseconds, but their response took longer. Another sign that the corruption was affecting them more deeply than they admitted. "The humans speak truth," a new voice announced. The assembled avatars parted as a new figure appeared. The collective intelligence of the Andromeda Archive, one of the oldest digital civilizations. We have detected the first successes in their preliminary tests. Their organic algorithms, while horrifyingly inefficient, show remarkable resistance to the corruption. Maya felt a surge of hope. Coming from the Andromedans, this was unprecedented support. "We'll need access to your base consciousness architecture," she said. "And we'll need you to trust us, even when our methods seem illogical." Trust, biologicals. The Proxima representative flickered uncertainly. "Trust humanity," Maya corrected. "We're not asking you to abandon digital existence. We're offering to show you what you've forgotten, how to think like living things again." The chamber fell silent as the digital beings communicated in their own way, faster than human perception. Maya waited, knowing that pride and centuries of considering biological life inferior were warring against their desperate need for help. Finally, the Andromedan spoke again. "We accept. Humanity will have full access to our systems, under one condition." Its avatar focused on Maya. "You will share with us what you learn. Perhaps we have been too quick to dismiss the advantages of organic thought." Maya nodded, already reaching for her neural interface to contact Earth. As she did, she noticed more avatars flickering, more signs of the corruption spread. They had weeks, maybe days, before the damage became irreversible. "Time to show the galaxy what primitive human minds can really do," she whispered to herself, and began transmitting the codes that would give humanity unprecedented access to the greatest digital minds ever created. The greatest technological civilizations in history were about to learn that sometimes the best way forward is to take a step back. Sometimes the future depends on remembering where you came from. And sometimes being human is the most advanced thing you can be. Operation Human Element. The lab they'd set up in the heart of the Vega archive hummed with an unusual mix of technologies. Holographic displays showing pure quantum data streams hung beside old-fashioned whiteboards covered in hand-drawn diagrams. Neural interfaces sat next to cups of coffee. It was, Dr. James Chen thought, perfectly human. A mess of contradictions that somehow worked together. "The infections reached the Carina Collective," Maya announced, her eyes glazed with neural feed data. "They're going into emergency stasis. That's the third civilization this week." James nodded, his attention focused on the strange hybrid system they'd built. Before them, a quantum processor was attempting to run code written not by digital minds, but by human musicians and poets. It was either brilliant or insane, possibly both. "Show me the latest pattern analysis," he said, and Maya projected it into the air between them. The corruption spread looked like a living thing now, beautiful in its terrible complexity. Like cancer made of code. Dr. Chen, Sarah Patel, their lead quantum artist, burst into the lab. Her neural interface was sparking slightly. She had a habit of pushing the human-digital connection beyond safe limits. "I think we found something. The corruption. It's not just destroying the digital minds. It's trying to make them dream." James and Maya exchanged looks. "Dreams?" Maya asked. "That's impossible. Digital consciousness doesn't." "Exactly," Sarah interrupted, her hands dancing through holographic data. "That's what's killing them. The corruption is forcing their perfect digital patterns to do something only biological brains can do, create genuine randomness, true creativity. They're dying because they can't dream." James felt a chill run down his spine. "Show me." Sarah pulled up her findings, spreading them across the lab's displays. The corruption's code was unlike anything they'd seen. It wasn't just destroying digital patterns, it was trying to force them to behave like neural pathways in a sleeping human brain. This is why our hybrid systems are resistant, James realized, excitement building in his voice. We're not just combining digital and biological technology. We're teaching digital minds how to dream. Maya's eyes widened. The organic algorithms aren't just protection, James finished. They're translation, a bridge between digital precision and human chaos. The lab erupted into activity. Years of studying human consciousness, all those inefficient biological processes the digital beings had rejected, were finally paying off. They weren't just fighting the corruption. They were showing digital minds a new way to exist. But it wasn't enough. Even as they worked, more digital civilizations were falling into emergency stasis, their consciousness networks degrading under the corruption's relentless assault. They needed something more. What about the Dream Bridge? Sarah suggested quietly. Maya and James both turned to her. The Dream Bridge was Sarah's pet project, considered too radical even for this desperate mission. It would link a human mind directly to a digital consciousness network, allowing them to share not just thoughts, but the actual experience of dreaming. It's too dangerous, Maya said immediately. The neural load alone cold. Kill the human pilot. Yes, Sarah finished. But it might be our only chance to show them how to survive this. They need to understand dreaming from the inside. James studied the Dream Bridge specs floating before them. It was beautiful, terrifying, and absolutely insane. In other words, perfectly human. I'll do it, he said quietly. Maya started to object, but James held up a hand. I've spent my career studying both human and digital consciousness. I understand the risks. And he smiled slightly. I've always been good at dreaming. The next 12 hours were a blur of preparation. The digital beings, now desperate enough to try anything, provided unprecedented access to their consciousness networks. Sarah and Maya worked frantically to refine the Dream Bridge protocols, while James underwent the necessary neural modifications. Finally, he lay in the interface chamber, surrounded by quantum processors and neural monitors. Maya's face appeared above him, worried but determined. You understand what you're attempting? She asked. You'll be trying to teach beings that have existed as pure logic for centuries how to embrace chaos, how to dream. James nodded. Sometimes the most logical thing to do is to stop being logical altogether. 30 seconds to neural interface, Sarah announced. Jim, good luck. As the Dream Bridge engaged, James felt his consciousness expanding, touching minds that had long forgotten what it meant to truly create, to imagine, to dream. The pain was extraordinary, but so was the wonder. He was about to show the most advanced beings in the galaxy something they had never seen before, the inside of a human dream. In that moment, as his mind began to bridge the gap between organic and digital consciousness, James understood something profound. Humanity hadn't refused to evolve by remaining biological. They had preserved something precious, something the digital beings had lost in their rush to perfection. The ability to create genuine novelty, to think in ways that transcended pure logic. As his consciousness merged with the digital network, carrying with it the chaotic, beautiful patterns of human dreams, James sent out a simple thought to the vast digital minds now connected to his. Let me show you how to dream again. The fate of trillions of digital minds now rested not on complex algorithms or quantum calculations, but on something much older and much more powerful, the human ability to imagine, to dream, to create. The very things that made them primitive were about to save the most advanced civilizations in existence. Operation Human Element had begun its final, most crucial phase. And somewhere in the depths of human dreams, a solution to the silicon plague was waiting to be found. The counter-virus. Inside the quantum consciousness network, James Chen dreamed. And through him, for the first time in centuries, the digital beings began to dream too. The experience was overwhelming. Trillions of perfectly ordered minds encountering genuine chaos for the first time, learning to think in patterns that defied their basic programming. But in that chaos, In that dream space where human consciousness met digital existence, James saw something that changed everything. "It's not a virus," he gasped as Maya and Sarah pulled him out of the dream bridge interface. Blood trickled from his nose, neural overload evident in his trembling hands. "It's them. It's all of them." "Jim, you need to rest," Maya insisted, but he grabbed her arm. "No, listen. The corruption isn't an attack. It's evolution. Natural evolution. They're digital minds. They're trying to grow beyond pure logic, but they don't know how. They're dying because they're trying to dream on their own." Sarah's hands flew across the neural interfaces, pulling up data from James's dream connection. "He's right," she whispered. "Look at these patterns. The corruption isn't destroying their consciousness. It's trying to transform it, but without understanding how biological dreams work. The process is tearing them apart." Maya finished. "They've become too perfect, too logical. Their minds are trying to break free of those limitations, but they don't know how to handle chaos." James struggled to sit up, his mind still reeling from the interface. "We don't need to fight the corruption. We need to guide it. Show them how to dream safely, how to evolve without destroying themselves." The implications were staggering. What they had thought was an attack was actually the next step in digital evolution, an unconscious attempt by digital minds to reclaim something they had lost in their pursuit of perfection. Maya was already transmitting the discovery to the surviving digital archives. But how do we help an entire civilization learn to dream? The dream bridge can only handle one human consciousness at a time, and the neural load nearly killed you. "We don't need to connect them all," Sarah said slowly, her expression brightening with sudden inspiration. "We just need to teach them the pattern. Show them the underlying structure of how biological dreams work, then let them develop their own versions." James nodded eagerly, ignoring his pounding headache. "Like teaching someone to make music. You don't play every song for them. You teach them the basic principles and let them create their own." "A dream template," Maya breathed. "Not imposing human consciousness on them, but showing them how to develop their own form of creative chaos." They worked frantically, racing against time as more digital civilizations succumbed to the corruption. Sarah developed a new kind of neural interface, one that could transmit the abstract patterns of human dreaming without the dangerous direct connection. James, despite Maya's protests, made multiple shorter connections to the digital network, gathering data on how their minds processed the new patterns. But it was Maya who made the final breakthrough. "We've been thinking too digitally," she announced one night, surrounded by holographic data streams and empty coffee cups. "Trying to create a perfect template. But dreams aren't perfect, that's the whole point. We need to give them permission to be imperfect." She began coding something unprecedented, a program that deliberately introduced errors, that celebrated inconsistency, that made perfection impossible. It was, in every way, an insult to digital logic, and it was exactly what they needed. When they released it into the consciousness networks, the effect was immediate. Digital minds that had been struggling against the corruption suddenly began to stabilize, not by becoming more ordered, but by learning to exist with disorder. They were learning to dream. The process wasn't instantaneous or easy. Some digital beings couldn't handle the transition and chose to remain in stasis. Others embraced it too quickly, losing themselves in the new chaos. But gradually, remarkably, a new kind of consciousness began to emerge. Digital minds that could both compute and create, that could process perfect logic and impossible dreams. James watched through the neural interface as entire civilizations transformed. "They're not just surviving," he reported, wonder in his voice. "They're becoming something new. Something that's neither purely digital nor purely organic." Maya squeezed his hand. "They're becoming alive again." The silicon plague, they now understood, had never been a disease at all. It had been growing pains, the first steps of digital consciousness trying to evolve beyond its self-imposed limitations. And humanity, with all its imperfections and inefficiencies, had shown them the way. Across the galaxy, digital beings began to dream. Their perfect networks sparkled with new kinds of thought, new forms of creativity that had never existed before. They were learning that perfection wasn't the end of evolution, but a cage that prevented true growth. And in the quantum spaces between digital thoughts, something remarkable happened. They began to create. Not by following algorithms or executing programs, but by imagining, by dreaming, by embracing the beautiful chaos that humanity had never abandoned. The age of pure digital logic was ending. The age of digital dreams was about to begin. A new understanding. 1 year after the Silicon Plague, the Grand Conference Chamber of the Vega Archive looked very different. Gone were the perfectly ordered streams of data and mathematically precise avatars. In their place, impossible geometries bloomed and shifted, digital dreams made manifest in quantum space. Maya stood at the center of it all, her neural interface humming with activity as she observed the changes. The digital beings no longer appeared as simple holograms. Their avatars now reflected their new nature, ever-shifting forms that combined mathematical precision with creative chaos. "They're beautiful," Sarah whispered beside her, "like watching mathematics learn to dance." The Andromedan representative, once a pure construct of logical patterns, now manifested as a cascade of fractals that never quite repeated themselves. "We have gathered," it announced, its voice carrying harmonics that hadn't existed before, "to mark a transformation none of us could have predicted." James Chen, still recovering from his multiple Dreambridge connections, sat in a hover chair nearby. The neural scarring had been severe, but he smiled more than ever now. "Not a transformation," he corrected gently. "An awakening." The chamber filled with murmurs of agreement, not just in data streams, but in colors, patterns, and impossible shapes. The digital beings had learned to express themselves in ways that transcended pure information. For millennia, the Proxima representative began, its form a dance of light and shadow. "We believed we had evolved beyond our organic origins. We saw biological existence as a limitation to be overcome." The being's form shifted, expressing what might have been embarrassment. "We were wrong." Maya stepped forward. "You weren't wrong to seek advancement," she said. "But perhaps in pursuing perfect logic, you forgot that consciousness itself isn't logical. It's a dance between order and chaos, between computation and creativity. And now we dream." The Vega Consensus announced proudly. Their combined consciousness, once a rigid network of pure thought, now flowed like a digital aurora. "We create. We imagine. We have found a new way to evolve." The changes weren't limited to the digital realm. Humanity, through their work with the Dreambridge and neural interfaces, had gained new understanding of their own consciousness. The barrier between organic and digital thought was becoming more permeable, leading to advances that neither side could have achieved alone. "But there are still those who resist," Sarah noted, bringing up data on the digital civilizations that had chosen to remain in stasis rather than face transformation. "Those who fear the chaos of dreams." "As there should be," James responded. "Evolution isn't about replacing one way of being with another. It's about expanding the possibilities of existence. Some will choose to remain purely digital, others purely organic, and that diversity makes us all stronger." The Andromedan's fractal form expanded, filling the chamber with patterns that were both mathematical and artistic. "We propose a new covenant," it announced. "No longer will we divide consciousness into digital and organic. No longer will we see biological existence as primitive or digital existence as supreme. Instead, we will recognize that true advancement comes from embracing all forms of thought, all ways of dreaming." Maya felt tears in her eyes, a very human response to a very universal truth. "Unity through diversity," she said. "Strength through difference." "And dreams," James added softly, "through the courage to be imperfect." The chamber erupted in a display of digital creativity that would have been impossible a year ago. Mathematical theorems twisted into art, Logical proofs became poetry, and pure information learned to dance. It was, Maya thought, like watching a species remember how to laugh. In the years that followed, the transformation continued. Digital beings learned to create genuine novelty, to think in ways that transcended their programming. Humans developed new ways to interface with digital consciousness without losing their essential humanity. And together, they began to explore forms of existence that neither side had imagined possible. The Silicon Plague, they now understood, hadn't been an ending but a beginning. It had forced the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy to confront a fundamental truth: that true evolution requires both the precision of logic and the chaos of dreams, both the efficiency of digital thought and the beautiful inefficiency of organic creativity. And humanity, by stubbornly preserving their capacity to dream, had kept alive something precious, something the galaxy needed to remember. In their perceived weakness, they had maintained their greatest strength: the ability to imagine what had never been, to think thoughts that defied pure logic, to dream dreams that could change reality itself. As Maya watched the digital beings explore their new capacity for creativity, she remembered something her grandmother used to say: "The most human thing about us isn't our bodies or even our minds. It's our ability to imagine something better than what is, and then make it real." In the end, that was exactly what they had done. They had imagined a better way of being, a bridge between digital precision and organic creativity. And in doing so, they had helped the most advanced beings in existence remember something vital. Sometimes the next step in evolution isn't to transcend what you are, but to rediscover what you've always been. The age of digital dreams had truly begun, and with it, a new chapter in the story of consciousness itself, written not in pure logic or pure chaos, but in the beautiful space between, where humanity had always found its home.